Let's say there's an accident, a disease, or a death. How do we handle that? Sure, you can process it academically, right? From a logic model, I solve A and B and C and D, but none of that will actually help you process that emotionally. And so what normally gets people out of bed is motivation, how they feel about themselves, relationships, decision making with others. These are all EQ.
Welcome back to PhD Coffee Time. This is the online community for you as PhD student to get motivation, peer support, and practical tips during your PhD. Last time in the postdoc video, I have taken tests with Welcome Solution, which career path is the most suitable. Today, I want to understand one quantity of my intelligence, which is EQ, because I wanted to understand the pharmaceutical industry. So I went to one of the free online conference by MSL Society. One of the talk that was the most fascinating is emotional intelligence, or EI. People who work as MSL, they need tremendous people skills because they are the face of that pharmaceutical company. They are like the professor for the company's product, and they are informing internal stakeholders such as sales and marketing people. They're also informing the external stakeholders like doctors. So you can see this is the person who is playing the liaison role, talking to different people, getting the ideas to improve the development of a product. To me, it is a really difficult job if you are not a people person. And if you want to know more about MSL, this is a video I would recommend by Biomagicated. Kevin has talked a lot about what MSL does and why you may be interested in an MSL career. But to me, what's striking is how EQ can be assessed and improved. Today, I want to share with you a video with Mitch. He's the founder of STRUT, a company that is helping many children to improve their EQ. And to me, scientists are children at heart. So I'm excited to test out my EQ. And for those who want to improve your EQ so that you're more employable by the industry and maybe a better professor in the future, I highly recommend you to watch to the end of this video to find out more about yourself. And if you're curious about how good is Vera's EQ, then you can also watch this video.
Well, I don't know. I do see some areas that are a little concerning that need some help. No, I'm just kidding. I think one of the important things that we have to understand that unlike IQ, EQ can be quantified, but it's not necessarily as specific in terms of values of one being better than another.
Let's welcome Mitch from STRUT Learning. He's today's expert on the topic of EQ.
And so we really broke up the scores into quartiles, let's say sort of emerging, developing, meeting, and exceeding these specific skill areas. However, it does not mean that each one is exactly 25%. So if you have exceeding, it doesn't mean it's 0 to 25. It doesn't mean that developing is 25 to 50, because society is very different, right? Our ability to demonstrate skills in a certain area like self-awareness is very different than social awareness. And so we're actually oftentimes better at social awareness than self-awareness because we have to interact with people at school and at work, but yet we are not necessarily taught more directly to function on a self-awareness level. We're not taught to do journaling. We're not taught those skills as well. And so it's unfair to sort of compare each one in the same way. Responsible decision-making, right? So that's your highest area. And then, yeah, I think you were saying that probably the lowest area is self-awareness. Now, it's really about understanding what each term is. And so we follow emotional intelligence theory, and we also follow social emotional learning. And they have many different models, but we have sort of a hybrid model that's one of the most popular ones. And so of each competency area, you'd look at what area do I need to develop the most? And then within that, there's a breakdown of sort of sub-competencies. What are the elements within that I need to look at? And so just like in any developmental process, you want to, one, just gain awareness of where am I at? How am I doing? And nobody's good or bad. It's not about comparing. That's why we don't have numbers. It's not saying one person is better than another. Sure, some skill sets might be more developed for certain individuals, for certain people type, but that doesn't mean that you can't develop them. I think one of the most important things that people should understand is that EQ in the last 30 to 60 years has been found out that you can actually develop these skills. Just like hard science, you can develop these soft skills. And so for you, it might be looking at self-awareness. In it says, maybe self-perception and optimistic outlook are two areas that you can develop. And then it gives a little bit of the recommendations on that. I think that there are many ways that people can approach it. I think from an SCL model, self-awareness is really about, one, just accepting who you are, right? So there's a level of acceptance that you have to have. Two, it's about understanding that this is a lifelong journey, and where you start and where you end might go up and down, and that it's not about comparison. One of the challenges about digital media, I think it's fantastic for a lot of things, but one of the areas that's challenging is that we're always put into comparison, right? Men versus women, certain cultural groups versus another, salaries, stuff like that. And so it's about focusing less on that comparison. Self-awareness isn't about comparing you to somebody else. It's really about how do you view yourself and how do you accept yourself, and then how do you work to improve where you're at. So the biggest part of this is really sort of that paradigm shift of acceptance. Now, you might accept where you are, but you might not say, hey, I still need to improve. That's absolutely fine. But it's about understanding where you are, accepting that, and then developing. Just like any change management process, you have to look at micro improvements, and you have to look at where do you want to target first. And I think a lot of people try to create really large goals that are very difficult to attain. In the real world, a lot of people are saying, oh, I want to lose weight, and I want to get to go to the gym, and I want to do all this stuff. And it's like, wow. I mean, if you haven't done it for 20 years, why are you going to add 3 different major goals that are very difficult to accomplish in such a short time? Instead, it's looking at, from an EQ level, we look at where's the motivation behind it? Where is the self-awareness behind it? How do we put these into responsible decisions? From a change management, behavioral modification perspective, sort of what I was saying earlier, we can't bite off more than we can chew. That's one. And two, we want to try to find a path to success. Every time you're successful in creating change, that reinforces that desire and your ability to create change and your belief in yourself. Every time you don't accomplish a goal, and let's say that's called failure, and failure isn't bad, but let's say you set up a goal and you fail at it, and then you set up another one and you fail at it, you're going to have more doubt about your credibility to create goals. And so then you're sort of self-sabotaging yourself. So I think that for most people, you should start off with something that's not very difficult. What are you medium good at already? And why not focus on that to improve, as opposed to focus on the things that are the most difficult? So I think that's sort of message number one. Two, as you said, SMART goals. Goals are the broader ones. Objectives are more the tasks. And so when you're creating that goal, you need to break it down, not only a SMART goal, but then you need to create layered SMART objectives as well. And just like in anything, we need to hold ourselves accountable. Are we using a journal? Are we telling somebody else to hold us accountable? Are we documenting it somewhere? Do we have a certain goal and a reward? Right? I mean, you could use any number of different methodologies, from an intrinsic perspective of, when I finish it, I'm just going to feel good and I'm going to reward myself on just positive energy. Am I going to have more of an extrinsic perspective where if I finish it, I'm going to get, I'll buy myself a nice dinner or something like that? Is it extrinsic? It doesn't matter which one it is. Obviously, intrinsic is a little bit more higher level on self-awareness, but you have to start wherever you're at. So I would say step one is choose an accomplishable medium level goal that's not overly difficult, then create SMART goals, and then create SMART objectives, and then work to hold yourself accountable. And this isn't, this is not anything new. I think the newest part is just saying don't choose the one that's the most difficult. And then from there, if you're looking at, for you, let's say that it's self-awareness and it's looking at self-perception and optimistic outlook. These are some of the more difficult ones, but these might not be as difficult as some of the other ones that you have in the relationship parts. And so I would also say that it's easier to do things by yourself and to focus on it because you don't really need to share it. So self-awareness compared to relationship, but at the same time, you have less accountability. So you have to sort of decide what works for you. But if we're looking at self-perception, I think it's a matter of doing things that allow you to reflect on yourself and then look at the etymology of it. If you have a certain feeling, what's causing that feeling, right? Is it outside external pressure? So a little bit more about EQ. So emotional intelligence is the idea of cognitive skills that are non-academic. And so we talk about feeling and motivation. We talk about it being in the heart, but that's really personification. It's all in the brain, right? And so there are things that we learn as hard science, math, grammar, science, specific skills that relate to academics. But there are a lot of non-academic skills that we need, looking at communication, relationship development, self-awareness. A lot of terms that we hear in the public are actually EQ: leadership, grit, perseverance, passion, friendliness. Those are all actually EQ. And when we break down things, certainly an individual needs both IQ and EQ. But when we're really looking at life, what do we need more? Well, somebody can be very smart, but if they don't love themselves, if they are depressed or unhappy, that life is going to be very difficult. If they are lonely and don't know how to make relationships successful at work or in life, that's difficult. Also, computational thinking, a lot of it requires a scientific approach. However, there's a lot of aspects that really rely on EQ. Let's say there's an accident, a disease, or a death. How do we handle that? Sir, you can process it academically, right? From a logic model, I solve A and B and C and D, but none of that will actually help you process that emotionally. And so what normally gets people out of bed is motivation, how they feel about themselves, relationships, decision-making with others. These are all EQ. At STRUT Learning, we are trying to make children both smarter and happier. And by doing that, we think we can make learning easier, faster, and healthier. And we do that by leveraging the theory of emotional intelligence and social emotional learning and technology. So we build EQ technologies that help individuals assess their current emotional and EQ state, as well as technologies that help provide learning these skills in an adaptive way. It adapts to your emotional state and EQ level. In general, we're focusing on elementary schools, so K through 12 in the beginning, but these are things that can help anybody. And so at Strut, we're an all volunteer team of teachers, SEL experts, data scientists, technologists, and entrepreneurs. So all we do is we take the science and we develop technologies for people to actually be able to assess it, because we know that EQ in the real world is actually leading to more success than IQ. It improves grades, improves managing your emotion, improves behavior, improves graduation rates to career success. I mean, people with higher EQ actually make $30,000 more than people with lower EQ. Most of our tools right now are free. So we actually have EQ assessments. An adult can take it, a parent and child can take it, a student, teacher, school psychologist, principal can take it. So that's entirely free. And we actually say it's free forever. So it's not a freemium. And then we have SEL activities on our website. That's actually being expanded in the next 2 weeks. And we have daily SEL. These are activities that individuals can do on a self-reflective level, so maybe like a journal, and also activities that you could do with other people. And then we're having also more formal activities that are developed, and they are by 3 different age groups. So like young people, middle-aged young people, and then adult. And then they're also broken down by competencies. Is it focusing on self-awareness? Is it focusing on social awareness? What area do you need to develop? And then we have a third layer that they're both digital and non-digital activities. Just because we promote technology doesn't mean that we believe that EQ has to be distributed or that you should spend all your time online. And so those are some of the free ones out there. From a tip, I would say that if you're looking at people who really create change in themselves, if you look at support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, if you look at support groups that find religion in prisons and stuff like that, what is the pattern of these individuals that are able to create change and sustain change compared to those who are not? You know, it's just like anything, right? It's just like eating healthy or taking care of the environment or continuous learning or being healthy with physical exercise. Nothing happens by itself. It takes significant effort. And so the journaling, the whatever, just the desire to do it is a great place, starting with an assessment and then building small objectives and then just building those skills. But it doesn't come easy, but it has great rewards. And so the way we normally end it is, what would the world be like, or how would your life be changed if you were 10% happier, 10% more successful? How would your life be impacted? Because that is what SEL has been proven to do, to change things almost on a 10% level. If you're looking at what are the first steps in religion or in a self-help group, it's ownership. It's admitting that you have a problem. It's awareness of where you're at. It's awareness of how you're hurting other people. Well, what is that called? Well, self-awareness, social awareness, taking responsibility for yourself, responsible decision making. These are all the components of EQ. And so they've been using EQ at an early stage. And the program itself is what? It's just a program, it's a formula to hold you accountable. Isn't that what we talked about? Doing journaling or letting somebody else know to hold your behavior accountable, having a reward. And so it's a step-by-step process. For religion, it's about admitting that you are not the most powerful thing. You're not in control, that there's a higher power that is. And then it's about learning some of the knowledge about religion, but then it's about showing that through your thought and your behavior, right? Well, that's EQ, from self-awareness to self-management to responsible decision making to then affecting change in other people. Social awareness.
I'm going through your SEL activity on the website, and I think this is a wonderful to-do list for setting a small goal into developing each aspect. And I think a lot of parents who are listening, who are PhD, they may need this tip to help their children out. Now I realize what are the smart goals I can make for 2021.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, I hope today's video was helpful because Mitch has really given me a great overview on what are the aspects I can do, and I feel so much better about my score, realizing there are ways to improve in a way that is not overwhelming. I hope you enjoyed today's videos over a coffee, and if this video inspired you to improve your EQ, share this with a friend and hit the like button below so that YouTube will know this is good stuff for PhD students. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.